Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Looks like we might get some rain today, huh? That background of yours, Tim, you got to update it for like the cloudiness.
No, it's always sunny in my world. Yeah, I don't know when I took that picture, but that was a good day, I guess. It was nice and clear, no clouds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, some people think it's the real background behind me there. And it's nighttime out. That can't be real.
Right. So is it just, Tim, just yourself from the city this evening?
Yeah, it'll just be me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Maria let you all know she's moved on to Wheat Ridge. Now you'll have to be on Wheat Ridge's transportation committee this evening.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see that happening soon for myself anyway, so
Yeah.
just keeping it to Englewood.
I think I asked her, I don't think Wheat Ridge even has a transportation advisory committee up there. They've never formed one, I guess, so.
Well, hopefully we didn't scare her off. If that
Yeah,
wasn't
I don't
the
know.
case,
She didn't say it was ETAC, but I don't know.
out the door last, that damn ETAC. That's it,
Yeah, I
so,
just can't take those meetings anymore.
I know.
Good evening,
Yeah,
everybody.
Good topics
Chris.
tonight.
I am on a new computer and had to install Zoom, so apologize for the delay, but I'm getting the camera figured out right now. I'll be on in just a sec.
Right.
David, thanks for joining us tonight there. From City of Denver, huh? So
Yeah,
what you guys are looking at there. Be interested to hear more about it this evening.
yeah, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. Happy to answer questions as we get a little further into the agenda. Thank you.
And I thought I saw Patrick for a second. Did anybody else see him join?
I did. I didn't know if it was a mirage there, Greg, but you know, it looked like he did pop on and then popped off right away. So
Okay. And then there's Patrick. Great. And Tim Whitney as well. I didn't see an email from him saying he'd make it or not necessarily, but I think that we've got a quorum now regardless. So I will call to order the September 8th, 2022 Englewood Transportation Advisory Meeting. And it looks like the first thing that we have is recognition of public comment. But I don't think that there's anybody here for public comment. Okay. All righty. We can always, if there's somebody who does join later and wants to chat, we can always give them some time. And the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the July 14th meeting.
I looked at them and I think they are acceptable to me. So I motion that we approve those minutes.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Patrick. Any discussion or questions? All righty. So let's go ahead and vote. And if that's Michelle, maybe you could call folks out. Thank you.
Sure. Chair Knaddison.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lewis.
Aye.
Member Sarno.
Aye.
Member Diedrich,
Aye.
and Member Heller.
Aye.
All right, motion carries.
Great, thanks, everybody. And the next item, I think we were going to go through in a slightly different order tonight, so that David can speak first and then choose whether or not to stick around for the rest of our business. So this is, I guess I'll pass it off to you, unless Tim, I don't know if you have like an introduction you want to share about this project.
No, I think I'll let David kind of introduce it and talk to us about what he's proposing here, and ask him for the feedback on whether the city wants to participate at what level into this study they're looking to take on. And I'll let David talk a little more about the purpose and the goals and kind of what they're hoping to accomplish with it.
Perfect, thank you.
Just one quick suggestion, if before we get started here, Chair Knaddison, is it possible, and I don't know if this pertains to maybe your introduction here, presentation here, David, but should we put the agenda up with that material there so we can view that? Or again, if you have other ways of presenting this, I don't want to discourage that, but I just thought maybe that might be beneficial to have as part of the agenda. That's what we're referring to, correct?
Sure. Yep. This is the Federal Boulevard BRT
Right.
topic, I believe.
Yeah.
And did you want to share your screen, David? Do you have some information to share?
I think it's best if we work with the packet. I didn't have a separate presentation, so I don't think I had met the deadlines to provide a separate presentation.
Okay.
All right.
Well, then here we are. Yeah, go for it.
Appreciate the opportunity. So the purpose of our discussion tonight, I've been having discussions with Maria, and sorry to see that she's moved on, and then picked up those conversations with other members of the Public Works Department since then. Denver has been leading, as many of you know, the East Colfax Bus Rapid Transit Project, and we've been partnering with the city of Aurora on that. And within Denver, our number 2 priority corridor in terms of importance is the Federal Boulevard corridor, and we were positioning ourselves to start a study this year in 2022, and got the nudge from Dr.Cog and requests from others based on our experience leading the effort with Aurora to our east, that we try to put forth a similar level of effort and pull together a coalition of folks to make the Federal Boulevard Bus Rapid Transit Project the full-length corridor from 120th and Federal in Westminster all the way to Englewood Station, where you guys are. And so we have been building that coalition over the last 3 months. The purpose of the study is to take prior work to a 30% level of design and environmental clearance with the Federal Transit Administration. And then at the end of the study, in 2025, 2026 timeframe, pursue a FTA Small Starts grant so that we can have the corridor constructed by the end of the decade. This effort is supported and sort of enabled by a lot of the greenhouse gas rulemaking that has come from CDOT and moved its way through the Dr.Cog process. So this is one of the corridors that all of those agencies would like to move forward with. Federal Boulevard in the region is the 3rd highest ridership corridor in the entire region as a bus corridor after East Colfax and Broadway, and its ridership places it in the ranks with many of RTD's rail lines as well, without having the benefit of all of the things that rail lines enjoy or some of these other corridors enjoy in terms of transit signal priority and things like that. For Englewood, we've looked at your study and talking with staff, the Dartmouth Dartmouth corridor is one that is featured in your comprehensive plan, Englewood Forward. And this effort, I think, meets many of the intents of Englewood Forward, including the move vision element to be able to provide safe walking, bicycling, and transit connections, complementing some other work that you guys are doing on the Hampden corridor, and also supporting your future visions for transit-oriented development or greater, greater community infill along Dartmouth and south of Dartmouth. So I guess to keep it brief, the rest of the materials show all of the prior studies that have got us to this point. Studies by RTD in 2018, 2019, looking at corridors all around the region and sort of prioritizing which corridors made the most sense in terms of ridership, corridors that had the most opportunity to save people travel time, and most likely to be implementable within a horizon. And let's see, what else can I share with you briefly then? So I think the upshot of this, towards the bottom of this, is to ask you guys to participate as part of a coalition to put in a request for $4 million in regional TIP funds, Dr. Cog regional call. The applications are due on October 11th. At the very bottom, we've listed the proposed match amounts for all of the partners, and most of the partners are already partway through, as we are tonight, their process of getting approvals for the match. These are all the list of all the prior studies that have said federal needs a lot of work. Federal has a great opportunity for a lot of reasons: pedestrian safety, transit priority, and just on and on. Vision Zero corridor. So the bottom part there is, and this is the concurrence request that we filed with CDOT and RTD last Friday. So the request for Englewood is that you guys would be a partner. What this would mean as a partner is that you have a seat at the table, and that you can expect that the Dartmouth and Inca corridors would be studied for infrastructure improvements as part of this overall effort. I think your options here are to accept this proposal. If you also wanted to add South Federal, south of the city of Sheridan, your match should increase a little bit. If you went the other direction and weren't finding the value or the urgency in this request compared to other requests that may come before you, then we would keep you all as an operational segment, but not study any infrastructure improvements along Dartmouth or Inca. So that's the quick description of my request tonight. And I'll, I guess, turn it back to you guys for any questions you may have.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly, that's really puts it in perspective to describe federal as having such a high ridership when it's such a I think challenging area for pedestrians, with not a lot of, like the sidewalks are not super consistent. The stops don't have great amenities, stuff like that is in my, from my experience on a relatively small section of it. So that seems really impressive that people are already riding at such high levels. And that seems like clear demand, clear indication of a strong demand for better service that I think BRT could provide. Just one thought, it looks like Chris dropped off, and I wonder if he's in the waiting room. Okay, he might have had to restart his computer. So just hope that we'll keep an eye out for him. Anybody have any questions or comments?
I guess just a general question that I have is that, has this been, the study and so on, how long has Englewood been, I guess, connected or participating in this? You know, at some time. I mean, this is just very new information to myself, and perhaps I missed this at a previous meeting or what have you, or somewhere at the county, I'm sorry, the city. But is this just something relatively new that the city's collaborating with?
I would say the opportunity to pursue these funds and advance this corridor is relatively new. Partnerships been put together over the summer. Again, apologize for the break in communications with staff turnover. The overall corridor has been in discussion since 2018 when RTD completed the regional bus rapid transit corridor study looking at about 30 corridors.
Yeah.
You know, we've of course had the unfortunate little pandemic in the middle of everything.
Yeah. Chair Knaddison, could you scroll back up to just a few more pages, I think, to the initial page on this one here, to the description. Yeah, so let's see here. Interesting fact sets in the description there that I found there, and that really surprised me as well too, in terms of, I mean, I suspected that federal had a heavy presence in terms of the ridership, but I didn't know it was to that extent. That's called out there too. I mean, typically I'm always thinking Colfax and Broadway are pretty much the heavy hitters when it comes to that transit there. But I think there was a part of this to where I think it described what some of the changes would mean to that with the BRT. And I think it was, maybe if you go further down there, Greg. Yeah, did I miss that or somewhere? I think it calls out that it's right there. BRT is expected to operate 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, and will provide enhanced service frequencies compared to current service. Proposed operations are 5 to 10 minute frequencies during the peak and 10 to 15 minutes frequencies during most of the day. So I think that's an incredible improvement in terms of access and you know, being able to offer transit to the community there from what the current standard is. So to 20 hours a day, so I'm imagining it would be almost something like 2 to 6 in the morning would be the only hours where there's no services or no BRT, but the remainder of the day you would have this going on.
Yep, that's correct. And usually it'll be something like 12:30 to 4:30.
Or 12:30, 4:30
in the morning, because a lot of people have early shifts that start at 6 a.m. and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, especially I think in a corridor like Federal, I think it's very much needed. So, yeah, generally, I think that's a great plan.
All right. Well, are there any other questions I can answer to inform the decision that you might make on forwarding this to City Council?
I have a question. I apologize. I had to jump off and rejoin here. Yeah, sorry I missed a lot of the presentation. If you covered this already, please, I can go back and review the notes. That's fine. But I'm curious. You know, a big connection in Englewood is on Dartmouth, and with that, you know, development that's at the top of the hill there, I'm just kind of curious if and how this might tie into some of the work that's already been scoped out and is sort of planned for that section of Dartmouth and that connection. But, you know, I don't know when the study was done. I heard you guys kind of talking about changes in ridership, I think, when I joined back and pandemic a little bit. I'm not sure the context, but with that new development coming in and looking at those corridors where there could be the high crash intersection, you know, issues with pedestrians while you're focusing on these specific corridors, that section on Dartmouth, is that going to be tied in? Are you guys going to be tying that into this, or is part of this going to help out with that? Because that's really where Englewood ties in on our end, for the most part on the federal. I'm in support of some of the other stuff, but can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. We would intend to significantly improve the federal Dartmouth intersection related to the Colorado Heights development, and then enable that to make a significant connection along Dartmouth through a little bit of Sheridan and then on into Englewood. So we had a field trip earlier in the summer with CDOT, Denver Regional Council of Governments, RTD, and other folks, and stood out there at that intersection and recognized what sort of poor quality infrastructure there is. If you wanted to feel comfortable as a passenger of this service, you're standing literally on the street edge. We saw some people dashing across the intersection against the light because they were about to miss their bus on the other side. There's just a lot going on at this location that needs improvement on both sides.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I had a question about the sort of the location as well. And I tried to draw a map of the locations of what I read in this. So it looks like it would be for federal from like up at 120th.
Correct.
Down through Dartmouth. And you're saying that there's sort of an option that we have that we could encourage expanding the map further south, and then Englewood would be expected to kick in more money.
Yeah, I mean, Dartmouth, it could be a piece that you participate on. The part of federal down near Centennial Park could be a piece that you want considered for capital improvement. You could do both, you could do neither. So I think that's really a choice that you guys could make. And the way that we've been working the agreement with partners is generally by corridor length, sort of a proportional level of effort, with RTD providing $1 million of match. They don't have corridor frontage, if you will, so they've effectively bought down everybody's effective price tag to engage in this.
Yeah, and I guess that was another question I had. Would this look at like Dartmouth beyond just federal, or would it look really mostly at federal and 50 feet on either side or something?
With the ask before you tonight, it would look at the entire length of Dartmouth from federal over to Inca, and then all of the piece of Inca from Dartmouth down to Englewood Station. So complete that connection all the way across there and into the Englewood Station, so that you guys have high quality bus stops and improvements being made.
Got it. So something like that.
Correct.
Or literally that.
Literally
Okay.
that. Thank you for drawing that.
Yeah, sure. Okay. That's good to understand, because that was one of the questions that I had, was about the these different numbers. And I was just curious. So what you're saying is that these are proportionate to the section of the map, just the distance on the map that is going through each of these different municipalities.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I see you got a couple of hands raised. I think I saw Tim, your hand up first.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody, the city does have a project on Dartmouth already from Zuni over to the Platte River to put bike lanes and widen the sidewalks in that segment. So that kind of takes it over to the city boundary. The rest of west of there is Denver and Sheridan. So we do already have a lot of that program to do already. So we would want to duplicate efforts there and contribute more money to something we're already doing. But that's just something to keep in mind. We do have a study already to connect Dartmouth over to Inca to get to the light rail station there in the pass and stuff. I don't know if you can show that on the aerial photo, there you can kind of see the trail that's already there that we're trying to connect to, and at least get all the way to Zuni through the city limits, and then we have bike lanes and wider sidewalks.
Yeah, so that would be from sort of right here on Dartmouth. I think there's some changes to this bridge here, and then some lane adjustments going on Dartmouth over to Zuni.
Yeah, it'd be a 5-foot bike lane both directions on Dartmouth there is what we're going to be doing. We've got grant funding for that already. That project's actively underway now to get the design done. We're going to replace the signals at Zuni and at T-Hone there as well to make them a little more multimodal friendly there for all modes of transportation. So that is a project we have underway that we would not want to duplicate efforts with this project, I guess, if we want to contribute funding to something like that we've already got money contributed for. But just keep that in mind, I guess, as you think about how you'd want to maybe prioritize this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and Zuni has bike lanes on it already.
Yeah, and then that project would connect to Zuni. That's the plan, is we connect to the Zuni north-south bike lane there as well with this one we're doing. So that is a connection we're making in Englewood already to try to make Dartmouth a little more biking ped friendly. So it's within the city limits anyway. We've already got some activity going on, something similar to what's proposed here this evening.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and Member Heller.
Hi, everyone. You covered this already, but I just wanted to make sure that I was clear. If we or the city council says no, the bus still runs to our city center, but you just don't do bus stop improvements along the way? What's the big drawback if the city says votes no on contributing?
If you decide later that you want to join the project, you would have increased costs to complete the environmental effort separate from the rest of the corridor.
But the bus will continue to run that federal bus will continue to run to city center.
That's likely. That the bus operations is an RTD decision. So Denver doesn't operate the service. So those would be decisions that RTD would make without the infrastructure. As you see right now, the Route 30 has been broken into a bunch of pieces. And so the Route 30 comes down to Yale and then goes west over to Wadsworth, and a piece of Route 29 picks up Southern Federal here and goes down there. And then you have Route 35 that's got Dartmouth. And so that's a much different combination of services since the pandemic than it was in 2019.
Okay, got it. So it would be up to RTD then to whether they continue that different segments of routes, or if they'll actually do the route, even though we didn't invest in the money to improve the infrastructure.
Correct.
Okay.
Whereas I think if the infrastructure is there, then I think RTD makes the commitment then to run the service.
But that's not guaranteed?
I think that's guaranteed.
Oh, okay. You said I think, so but guaranteed. Okay. Thank you.
I'd say
Seems like
not 100% guaranteed. Those will all be all the things to be worked out during the effort. So the entire study to construct what this study will design would approach $400 million of investment in Federal Boulevard and Dartmouth. I guess that's really what you're after is a piece of $400 million project.
Yeah. So maybe I'll try to state my understanding and see if this sounds right, that sort of this is the planning phase where something would get studied and reviewed and designed to a 30% level. And then, in the future, if and when there's funding for it, then whatever the plan that's laid out now, it becomes very likely to get done. And I think for a lot of members of the Englewood Transportation Advisory Committee, we've seen how that's worked with the walk and wheel plan, where the high priority projects from that were just sitting there on a shelf. And then over the years, money's been found. And for example, now we have bike lanes on Dartmouth because that was one of the high priority projects. And so they were just able to take that off the shelf when funding was available and work on it. Is that an accurate description, David?
Yeah, that's accurate. So again, we'd be pursuing a small starts grant in 2025 timeframe. That would pay for about $150 million of the total corridor. Denver would bond for its section of the match, and CDOT has money available as the state. I guess proportionate based on CDOT's proposal. They're looking to put in somewhere between 70 and 90 million. So we're getting pretty close to, we'll have enough money to construct. And I guess if you opt out at this point, then joining later becomes a little more expensive. I guess what you guys are looking at is something that would be a $10 to $20 million per mile investment in Dartmouth.
Got it. Alrighty. Welcome, Mayor Sierra. Saw you join in. So we're just in the questions for David about this BRT proposal. If you have any thoughts you want to share, or if anybody else has any other thoughts or questions. Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So a couple of questions, and this goes to David and to Tim, and I guess Mr. Sierra potentially as well. I know we just went through a budgeting cycle very recently, and the last couple of meetings that we were having in this committee. So I'm kind of curious, what is to David on the timeline that you guys are looking for, a decision, kind of what you're thinking about, and then also maybe to Tim. I know we just approved some things and did some prioritization, and you talked a little bit earlier to what we kind of already have on the plate for that and how this might fit in. And maybe David, you could answer first.
Sure. Our intent is to submit a regional TIP application October 11th with whatever partnerships we have been able to confirm at that point. Our intent then is to release a request for proposals in January, which would be about the time that the TIP awards would be made, and put this effort into motion mid-23, expecting that it's about a 2-year study and design and environmental clearance effort.
Okay, and I guess Tim, for you, we have a process for these things, and I know the committee plays a role in moving this forward. It sounds like we have kind of a short timeline to have review on the city side. What does the process look like on our end, Tim?
Well, right now, we did not program any money into the budget for this city sheriff. If we want to move forward, we'd have to reduce the amount spent on a different project or something that's been programmed into the 23 budget. So this is not currently any funding identified in next year's budget for this. If it becomes a priority, it'd be something we'd have to probably trade off another project that's got funding to be able to put any city share towards this. We don't have a program or project identified yet for any participation funding wise on this anyway.
Okay. So we'd have to go to city council pretty quickly then and have a conversation with them. Okay.
Yeah, I'd be looking at adjusting the capital budget there to accommodate this somehow if we wanted to reduce another project or something to share in any of this cost. That's why I mentioned the Dartmouth project is programmed into the budget. We've got the funding for that, for the bike lanes and the sidewalks. So we do already have money towards this corridor anyway. It's not the specific project, but we do have some funding identified to meet some of these needs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then that sounds like, out of our committee here today, we probably need to make a recommendation that's pretty specific if we do want to put this forward as well. I think I heard Mayor or Mr. Sarda, or sorry, is Mr. Sierra on the phone?
I am, yeah. I just
okay. Okay. Yeah, if just curious on your end as far as process is concerned, what would you guys need to see or do on your end for us to move forward with a timeline like that?
Yeah, there's with it being something that we would have to add to next year's budget, and I have to take a look at that because I guess I'm looking at the notes and seeing if it's whether it's 2023 or not. But we still have at least a month to finalize the budget. The public hearing on the budget is not until the 18th or the 19th of September. So we still have time. But at least from this committee, obviously like a recommendation of moving forward with this project is something that we would want to see from council, but obviously from our standpoint, we just got to make sure that the budgeting dollars are there and be yeah, that would be the big thing, especially with so many capital projects that we already have invested. So I think it's a quick turnaround, but we'll see if we can get this, if this is something that we can prioritize.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful, and I think yeah, I guess as a committee we need to decide. I don't know if other people have questions too, but just thinking, what we want to put forward to council or recommend or not, either way that the community wants to go. We want to be thoughtful about that. So thank you all for your input on that. I appreciate that.
One last thing, some of the other partners are programming their commitment over a 2-year period. I don't know what Englewood's rules are around that, but seeing that the study won't start in earnest until 2023 and is probably a 2-year process, and they're budgeting that over a 2-year period.
Would that be something we could budget for 24? Or would you need funding in 23, the city's share of the money? Is that something we could put off till the 24 cycle, or would we need to commit for 23 funding?
I think we'd need a commitment that it would be there in 24, not an IOU, because we'll have started and be expending money during 23.
David and Tim, do you mind if I ask a question, because I may have jumped on, but we're at, the ask is $300,000 from Englewood, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and is it broken up evenly between 23 and 24? Would it be 150,000 each year?
It could be done that way, or you guys could do it proportionally, since we'd only have 6 months of the study effort out of a 2-year process in 23. You could backload it into the 24 period.
Okay.
Maybe have as little as a quarter of that amount in the 23 budget.
Okay.
So there's several different levels of funding, right, David, depending on if we want to fund the federal portion and the Dartmouth portion, or either or. Isn't there, like, you offer 2 or 3 different options for participation there?
Right. I mean, we want to adjust it to what's in Englewood's interests. We're not trying to dictate that. So the number here would be for inclusion of the Dartmouth and Inca alignment from Federal Boulevard over to Englewood Station. Thank you for sharing that, Chair.
What was just the federal portion again? Wasn't the federal portion a little bit less if we just wanted to do that part?
Yes, it would be less. Let's see if I've got that number super handy here. Yeah, if you just wanted the federal portion, it'd be about 200,000 instead, because it's a slightly shorter segment. And that would cover from whatever Radcliffe Clay, the Sheridan border down to Bellevue.
Was that kind of the 3 options, 300,000, 200,000, or then no participation at all funding wise? Correct.
Or if you're feeling really, aggressive about your transit plan, do both, and then it's 500,000. I'm not hearing that that's the pleasure of the committee.
I thought the 300 included the 200. It keeps going up here.
No, the 300 is East-West Dartmouth. The 200 is only the South Federal segment,
Okay.
not including Dartmouth.
That's what I remember there. So yeah, that's the different options there, I guess, depending on the level of interest, and it's more for if we want to do future capital improvements along those corridors there for transit, then we would need to participate to get into the NEPA process and stuff. Is that right?
Correct. Now or later. Aurora made the decision with us that they didn't want to participate, and as we went through the 30% design process, they said, "Oh, those stations look pretty nice, and what you're doing for your community is going to make us look pretty bad when you get to the city limits. So we'd now like to participate." And so they have, City of Aurora has approved $14 million this year to join the East Colfax project.
You know how many stations in Englewood or along Federal there? How many stations does Englewood have along Federal? Do you know?
I don't know offhand. So it's let's see, it's along Federal, it's 0.8 of a mile. So there would be about 2 stations each direction in a 1 mile segment. You have stations about 1/3 of a mile to 1/2 mile spacing.
And then you said Sheridan wasn't going to participate at this time. I think they're the ones north of us, right? So they're those stations wouldn't be done either through Sheridan at this point.
Correct. Yeah, Sheridan felt like they were making current transit improvements with a TIP grant that they had won a year or 2 ago and are currently constructing that. And they're feeling like at the moment that's what they are able to commit to. And so they were going to provide a support letter instead that said they think this is a good effort and they would like to be considered operationally, even though the infrastructure wouldn't be considered. They'd like to be considered that way and participate as a member of the Transportation Advisory Committee on that.
So it sounds like maybe there's 2 different things that we could consider voting on tonight. The idea of like recommending that city council consider this for funding, and then also just a letter of support. Is there anything else that we could potentially do one way or the other?
I think those are the 2 options really before this committee.
Okay.
And then you have the secondary choices if you would like to commit financially, how to break that up. But I think that's in the weeds details.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does anybody have, I mean, you know, like when we think about spending money, it's tempting to just say, let's spend it all and do the $500,000 version. But, you know, as you mentioned, Chris, that we just went through a budgeting process and, you know, chose the highest priority project. So does anybody have any specific feeling about how, like what we should fund? Or not?
You know, Member Knaddison, I would just like, or Chair Knaddison, I would like to say that yeah, I generally do support this project. And it was interesting though, as the more information came to light here regarding, I guess, the fact that, and Tim, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I'm understanding is that by supporting this and moving forward with that, the city would have to take funding away from perhaps another project that's already slated in 23. Is that my understanding of that?
And more than likely, all the funding for 23 has been allocated to other projects at this point. We've used up the full capital improvement funding we have for next year. So we would probably have to take a piece of one project or some and reallocate it to this.
But there is also flexibility that I'm understanding from, I think, David here, in terms of the city can break that amount up, and if it's 300,000, then split it up from 150,000 this year to 150,000 the following year. That's also a mechanism the city council can use as well too. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be something we have to, you know, if you commit to 1 year and you commit to the second, we need to make that clear that it's committing 24 funding as well, and it's going to affect the 24 budget as well.
Right.
We typically don't do the 2-year cycle like that. It's usually the following year we program out, but we would need to make it clear that it's not just a 1 year funding. This would commit us to 2 years worth of funding towards this effort.
And those improvements, Tim, that you mentioned that are happening, that are slated to happen with the Dartmouth improvements up to Inca. So those are bike lanes, and I think some of that which you detailed, but they exclude some of the improvements that David is suggesting here at those stations. No shelters, I'm imagining, or whatever those improvements would be, right?
Right, yeah, there's no specific bus stop shelter improvements or anything with that project, but it definitely handles the sidewalks and bike lanes along there, so it makes it easier to walk and ride your bike through there. So it's the bus stops are a little bit of a different program or project there. They're not really funded by that.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have on that. Appreciate it.
If there's no further questions of me, I could take leave and allow you guys to finish your discussion and recommendation.
I want to hold you longer, but I think there might be questions in the process of voting. Does anybody, yeah, or Mayor Sierra, I saw you on mute if you have a comment.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so it's kind of hard for me to say whether or not this is something that we would prioritize for this year and next year, not knowing exactly what we've already allocated for this year, and whether or not those numbers are going to change as well, based off the feedback, or just based off any cost reductions or cost changes that have occurred over the past couple months since we last looked at the budget. But one of the things that I did want to mention is that I know this council looks favorably for projects when there is any type of coordination with other committees, when there are matching grants or matching dollars involved. So it kind of moves a little bit higher in the priority list. But again, it's kind of hard for me to say whether or not this is something we would prioritize, not knowing exactly what we have in store for the next couple of years. So.
Yeah. Would that be a possibility for Englewood to participate at like, I mean, I guess like compared to zero, a certain amount of money is better than none. Would that be a possibility for Englewood to participate at a lower rate than just doing it divided by mileage?
Sure, we could negotiate the scope elements that would get you to a number that might be comfortable.
Okay, that makes sense. Alrighty, well, feels like questions and comments are slowing down. Does anybody want to make a motion? In no direction. So perhaps what if we consider just the idea of a letter of support? Does anybody want to make a motion about a letter of support for this project?
So I'm kind of curious just to see amongst the groups, kind of what do you guys think? Because I don't want to necessarily put a motion forth, without knowing where people are at, because I would want to make the right motion. Also, I'm not sure if I can make one because my camera's not working, so I'm not sure if I officially count for something like that. But I'm just kind of curious what the team thinks. So, Dartmouth is an important connection. I think that if we were going to support something, I would be more in favor of Dartmouth than the other extended option. I really think it's important for us to participate in this. Englewood Station is an important connection to the light rail as it comes down Federal, and that thoroughfare on Dartmouth is important. The timing is kind of throwing me for a loop here, because I really want to support some of this stuff. I know it's on short notice. We would have to go, thinking about some of the things that were in the budget, we're going to have to go, like, there's some prioritization and some consideration that would have to be made with a few projects in there. And so I know that's going to be some hard work as well. And I want to be respectful, of people's time, because I know there will be a lot of effort there too. But also, Greg made a really good point earlier about how these are the types of projects that really help us with the long-term things that can help us apply for grants. We can go out and we already have this in our pocket, something comes available. We had someone in our office who was pretty good with that for a few years recently, and we got help on quite a few things, and that was really nice. And had we not done stuff like Walk and Wheel on some of those programs, we may not have been in as strong a position to receive some of those grants. So I'm a little torn on what the ask is, but I'm comfortable, with some convincing in any direction. I think it's important that we participate at least in some respect on this, just because of the connection that we have to that light rail station there, and a lot of the work that's going to be going on along that corridor on Dartmouth. So I'm kind of curious, what does the rest of the group think?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Chris, I pretty much want to echo your thoughts on that. I generally, and I think it was Mayor Sierra that also mentioned the partnering aspect as well too. And I feel like that's really helped augment a lot of the positive things I've seen in the city here recently. So, generally, Chair Knaddison, your request about a letter of support or in that I feel good about that. It just, from all these other caveats that I've heard here too, it's difficult to just blankly say, yes, we support that. But then in my mind, I'm also considering, well, what the details beyond that. Generally, yes, I would support that. But again, to some of these other considerations that have come up about either, having to take some money from another project or somewhere, some of those things kind of just have me a little skeptical in that sense there. So because I know we have a tight budget and we've gone through that, but again, I could generally say that I support this and doing that, but I'm hoping that at least the committee would be included in further conversation about what that entails and how we can even problem solve or prioritize a little bit further down the road if the issue of funding becomes an issue. If that makes sense there. So to do that there, but that's how I see it.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, I think, one other thing, if I'm understanding your characterization here, David, is that there's sort of money that's being thrown into this pool, that any work that we do now is sort of, it's like there's a sale, there's like a 30% off, 40% off sale or whatever on any work that's done now. Whereas if we were to do it later, we would be funding the whole bill for ourselves. Does that seem accurate?
I think that's accurate, or you would be pursuing your own grants at that time. So the $4 million ask for DRCOG CDOT funds proportionally would amount to about $250,000 coming back to match what Englewood is getting on this, or what you'd be putting in. And so if you forego that opportunity at this point, then at some later point you decide you want to do that, you're going after your own grant and writing your own application.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, Chris, I saw your hand up, but then retracted. Any other questions, comments, motions?
Yeah, I do have another question, and this is maybe more for Tim, but when I look at that corridor, one of the biggest bottlenecks is that bridge where Dartmouth goes over the river. And I know that there have been lots of conversations. There's work going on that specific spot right there. And I'm just wondering, and maybe you can't even answer this, but I'm just kind of curious, based on what's been discussed and planned for that specific piece of this corridor, and maybe this goes to David as well, based on the RTD maps, but I'm just kind of curious, what are the stuff that we're working on right now? Is that going to be prohibitive or not mesh well with this corridor plan and the planned use with this 24-hour a day bus service, based on kind of where we're at with that bridge? I don't know how that might match up, if it even matters, but I'm kind of curious your take on it, Tim and David as well.
Yeah,
But I think we're largely talking about bus priority lanes and bus stops along this. To include a bridge replacement or expansion, I think is, unless we could show that there was a transit nexus, that there's no way to get buses across the bridge, then I think the Federal Transit Administration won't look at that as a part of the transit project. They'll look at that as a separate bridge project that needs to occur.
yes, we've already got a project going to widen that bridge. So that widening that bridge would definitely help the bus service through Dartmouth there. That's obviously a bottleneck. Like you said, we need to get that extra lane on there to go all the way to Santa Fe. So it's certainly going to help the buses get back and forth across that bridge a lot better when we get that project underway here. But yeah, definitely would help the bus rapid transit for sure. If the more buses crossing there, it'll make it a lot smoother, that they won't be backing up traffic as much. We'll have another lane there for them to use.
Okay, thanks. That's very helpful. I guess I was kind of asking in case, maybe the plan says we need a dedicated bus lane or something along those lines, along with the pedestrian lane. So, knowing that the bridge will be wider, I guess that sounds like it will allow for more options in how traffic gets across that bridge. So thanks, Tim. David.
Alrighty, questions, thoughts, comments, motions? Alrighty, well, I mean, I think as chair that I'm allowed to make a motion, although I don't like to, but just out of like decorum. But I would like to, so I'm gonna make a motion to write a letter of support for this project from the city of Englewood to all interested parties. Is there a
I second
on
that. I second that.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Any discussion or questions? Alrighty, then we'll go to a vote.
Chair Knaddison,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lewis,
Aye.
Member Sarno,
Aye.
Member Diedrich,
Aye.
and Member Heller.
Hi.
All right, motion carries.
Alrighty, thanks everybody.
Thank you all for your time tonight.
Thanks.
Sure.
I mean, do you guys want to recommend the city looks into this? What do you think? Was fishing earlier.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? I mean, it's a short time frame. I know there's a few options. I personally would vote in favor of something for at least a next step. And I don't know if that means that, Tim would need to get out the prioritization list real quick so that we can, provide a strong recommendation. If that's what the committee wants to put forward, that's probably would be a way to move something quickly, or maybe it's some other type of consideration. But I mean, what do you guys think? I'm looking at Patrick, Jen, what do you guys think about? Should we ask the city to look at this further? I mean, I think we're obviously in support of supporting it, but what do you guys think?
Yeah, I do think we should look into it further. And just like you said, I think identifying the prioritization of different other items, maybe this would easily rise above some of the latter items on the list that aren't as critical. So that might be a big factor.
I think generally it would be good to, in offering our support for this, to kind of engage with what the next steps are to understand how the city is going to react to it or approach it, I guess, moving forward, if that triggers that. And I would hopefully would appreciate the city just coming back to us. And I don't know, again, concerning the time frame, what we're up against, when it has to happen pretty quick here, how quickly that can happen. Maybe by the next meeting. I'm not sure if that would be something we can look at then. So.
Yeah.
I think at this point, this is just a grant application, right? This is just for the application. We don't have any funding really secured yet for this. It's more of just a request of Dr. Cog. So I think there's time to come back later if the funding is granted, decide if the city wants to participate or not. I think getting the support letter helps to make the grant application stronger, obviously, but I'm not sure we need to get funding right now since it's just the application phase. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but I think we can come back later and commit funding if we want to, if it proceeds and it gets funding and looks like it's a go.
Yeah, that's correct. The award decisions from Dr. Cog would be made towards the end of the year. So if the award is made at the full $4 million request amount, then that might provide enough momentum to revisit the topic of Englewood's participation at that time.
That sounds like that may be a little more reasonable for our timeline there. I'll let everybody else speak to that, but that seems like that might be a little more in line with how we could make a decision.
I think that makes sense.
Just gonna keep looking at you all awkwardly until someone makes a motion.
I thought we already voted on that there, Chair Knaddison.
Yeah,
I think we
Now
did,
we're-
but we've made a motion to send a letter, but we could also recommend to city council to find space in the budget or to consider finding space in the budget for this, right?
Yeah, we could, and we could also make a motion to, have the city recommend or pursue being a part of the committee, as was also discussed. There's a few other things, we're the transportation committee. Let's act in our best interest and at least let the city know when we think things are important, if you guys think this is important. I recommend, all right, I'll make a motion. I motion that the city council pursue being a member of the panel or advisory group for which this study will require. Is that it? That's all. I think that's all. I recommend we pursue, joining the group and being part of the advisory panel, regardless of whether we are participating or not.
I second that motion.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions?
I'd just like to clarify, I understand that our participation may not be of our own accord. We may or may not be allowed to participate whether or not we fund this project. But generally speaking, I just wanted to have that on the record, that I realized that we may not be the final decision maker in that participation.
Good. That's very gracious of you. All righty. I guess there's no discussion, so we'll go to vote.
Chair Knaddison,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lewis,
Aye.
Member Sarno,
Aye.
Member Diedrich,
Hi.
and Member Heller.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Thank you
Alrighty,
for the
last
second
possible
motion.
topic. Yeah, for sure.
We'll look forward to
Um,
working with you all on this.
We do too.
Do we,
As well, David. Thank you.
yeah. Anybody want to make a motion about trying to find money for this?
I have a question for Tim. I'm just curious. I don't know if anybody has asked this yet, but are we party to or participating in other studies on this section of road currently, or engaged in them for the same sort of section of Dartmouth?
No, we don't have any ongoing studies right now for this section of Dartmouth or Federal there. We're just the project for the bike lanes and the sidewalks on Dartmouth is the only real activity we have in either of these corridors right now.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, the next item on the agenda is Englewood Hampton final supplemental materials. Tim, is this you?
Yeah, I can go over this. I wanted to share this. I'm not sure everybody on the committee has seen. These are our concept plans for the old Hampden improvements between Lafayette and Broadway. So I think Member Heller and I think Member Diedrich as well. I think you're on the planning, the public comment committee for this project. But I wanted to kind of share this concept with everybody and get your feedback on the kind of what we're looking at for the multimodal improvements, and see if you have any thoughts on ways we can make this work. But if you want to just, I guess I can kind of go through it. Basically, it's project is kind of broken down into 3 different segments of Old Hampden there, and they all have a one thing in common is the concept is it's called a multi-use path on the north side. It's a 10-foot wide path for bikes and pedestrians. And that's common through the whole corridor. That's the concept plan right now. And there's been some concern and feedback about how that multi-use path can work, if it can work for bikes and pedestrians, or if we need to think of a way to separate the bikes from the pedestrians better and keep them maybe on the street, or how we do that. But if you want to scroll down to the next, I think the next slide's a cross section that kind of shows where the path would be versus the road and kind of how the bikes, and yeah, I guess one more there would be the cross section there. That one there shows the so along the north side there would be this multi-use path I was talking about. And then there'd be a 4-foot landscape buffer there between the path and the road. And then we have the street would just be just for the cars only. All the bikes would be up on that multi-use path along with the pedestrians on the north side. And there would be a 5-foot walk on the south side that's wider than is there now. So that's the concept plan. But some of the feedback we've gotten is that multi-use path is that going to be something people will feel safe walking in, having bikes on there as well. And it's good to get your feedback on what you guys think, if there's a different way or any kind of a strategy of how to sign that path or how to use it. I mean, 10 foot's a kind of a typical width for a path for bikes and peds, but there's been some concern about trying to have them share that and how we might want to do that differently. I'd like to get some feedback from the committee if we could on your thoughts on that concept there, and if you have any other ideas of what might work better, or how to divide that path up for bikes and peds.
Chair Knaddison, this might be a question for you. So I've seen occasionally where you have what would be a path, and I'm not quite certain of the width that's laid out, and you do have what would be pedestrians kind of on one side, and then bicyclists on the other side coming back and forth as well, you know, just opposite directions, obviously. And then, but I'm not certain the width on that, what the requirements would be on that. It seems to try to facilitate something of that nature to kind of separate them, you know, the understanding, you know, you got bikes here and pedestrians here. I think that would be beneficial to kind of avoid the confusion and everything that would happen on a multi-use path, but I'm just unfamiliar with what that width requirement would be. And I don't know if 10 foot is sufficient. And I don't know why I'm turning to you on this, Greg, but I thought, well, you've got quite a bit of history and you look into a lot of this multimodal stuff yourself. So I don't know if you had any background on that, particularly when, you know, with bicycling and so forth.
Yeah.
Or anybody else for
Yeah.
that matter. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm happy to have anybody who's knowledgeable on this answer. I don't have a good sense of that. Yeah, I feel like I'm sort of torn, because on the one hand, I really love the idea of not just painted but protected bike lanes that are, you know, fully separated from the street traffic. And so from that perspective, it seems good. But as you're saying, Neil, if you've got bikes going in two directions plus pedestrians, I don't know how much space you need for that, if 10 feet is enough or not. I guess, you know, I have seen on like the campus of CU Boulder that they have, I think, bikes going in both lanes and people walking or bikes going in both directions plus people walking going in both directions. And I wonder how wide those paths are. Those are probably, they feel like they're pretty close to 10 feet. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, that's right now the only question that I have in regards to, I think, Tim, what your question was in terms of, you know, facilitating a comfort level for everyone to be able to use that 10-foot path, which I'm supportive of. I mean, it's a great improvement right here to what's existing out there. I've been on that corridor way too often recently, but to understand that this is a great improvement. But again, yeah, just to make it to where it's something that people feel safe and they feel like, oh, this is something that's functioning to a higher level to do that there. You know, we do have in this slide right here, it shows that 7.5-foot park strip. And I don't know, and I think the following slides might show that shrunk down a little bit as well too. So I don't know if there's a sense that that could be minimized just a bit to gain a little bit more on the path. I don't know if that conversation's been brought up as well too. So again, just brainstorming, just thinking out there in terms of maybe something that could help out with that.
I was able to
Okay, yeah.
find this map view of this is like the path along the outside of the campus in Boulder, coming down from the hill. If anybody knows it, going underneath that tunnel right there. And I believe that bike traffic is allowed in both directions on this side, and that there's arrows and icons to show that. And then and it's like a different color of cement, even maybe.
Yeah.
And then where it's pedestrians, the pedestrians go in both directions and they get this side. And there's not like plastic bollards or anything that keeps people from going in between. So if you've got a lot of people passing each other, then they squeeze over into the bikes a little bit and vice versa. Yeah. And yeah, Member Heller, please go ahead.
I might have missed this, but is there not room to put a bike lane in the street and have pedestrians? I was also just wondering, like, that whole corridor where the hospital is has a lot of traffic coming the other way too. So I don't know which is easier to, not even just car traffic, but like the valets and patients going to those parking lots don't always use the bridge, and there's those crosswalks. So I was just wondering, I guess, sort of two questions. Is there enough room to put the bike lane in the street and have it protected there versus on the sidewalk? But then my other question is, if it does become all of it on the sidewalk, is there going to be a lot of signage that bikes also have to yield? I don't know, it just seems like I drive down there a lot. It seems like there could be a lot of collisions of bikers and hospital people, visitors and things like that.
Yeah, so it's pretty difficult to get the bike lane, a protected bike lane, onto the asphalt there. It narrows the sidewalk down. We lose a lot of that landscape strip. That is an option that they looked at to do, and it was just very tight, and it didn't really give us the protection we were looking for. That was kind of the goal anyway. So that's where they came up with this concept of keeping the bikes and the peds on that multi-use path and being able to totally separate the bikes from the vehicles, so there was no try to reduce the any incidents between bikes and vehicles. So that was an alternative looked at, but it just didn't. There wasn't enough room really to do the protected location there. It just didn't fit very well. So that was one of the reasons that wasn't pursued. But the other option that's been brought up too is if we keep the multi-use path, we could put a sharrow down on the street for the more comfortable bike riders, or the more, what do they call them, the commuter cyclists, that a little more comfortable riding with the traffic, that if somebody did want to ride out in the street, it would still be allowable. You could get out there, and if you wanted to avoid all the peds, you could ride along with the traffic there. And that was a thought we had. You kind of give bikers an option of either using the path or the street. That was something we were considering as well.
Yeah. Would this be preferred alternative? Is that what it would be for the whole length, or for which sections?
So the multi-use path will be 10 foot for the whole length. There's a little bit of a difference in the width of the landscape strip, and I think some sections have to have a turn lane for intersections and stuff. We've got to keep the turn lane there for left turns, but you can scroll through the rest of the slides here. Each of the corridors has a little bit of a different
I see.
width to it there. So this is the segment B. This is between Logan and Clarkson, this next one here. So it's pretty similar. It's just the sidewalk on the south gets a little wider there. It can be 7 feet. We have a little more room. So it's a little different. But then the one furthest to the west by Lafayette, we actually have enough room to get an island in that section. So that's really nice. We're able to get the landscape down the center there as well, is what we're looking to do. That's really opens up there for us. But the multi-use path stays the 10 feet, and then we're able to get landscaping down the center kind of as the entryway to the city coming off of 285 there.
Got it. Yeah, please go ahead.
Did you see my chat? Is this linked somewhere? This presentation? Did I miss
Yes.
it?
I just messaged a link to you.
Awesome.
This is a HTML version. I think there's a PDF version on the website as well that you can download that has all the attachments.
Yeah, we've got it on the Englewood Engage webpage there. This project's a featured project on there that you can get to all the material there.
This is my trick for finding them. I go to the Englewood Civic website, then I click on the date, and then I click on transportation, and then I go to agenda packet. That's my rabbit hole that I go down.
You beat me to it, Greg.
Tim, so I have a question for you. I don't want to get too far ahead on the agenda. I'm looking through the packet and some of the slides, and it looks like there's a couple of different sections that are just laid out a little bit different than each other. And so I wasn't sure if it might make sense to look at some of those, or if you were trying to solicit input individually on each of these kind of different sections that are displayed on here. But I thought that might be helpful for some people to see those other ones too.
Sure, yeah, these additional slides just show all the turn lanes and a little more detail about the actual, every single block, how it would look there. But yeah, the main thing we're looking at now, that the multi-use path is a major decision we need to make to move forward there, to see if we're going to do that or not, because that'll change the quarter quite a lot if we're not going to do that, or if there's other thoughts or preferences there. We wanted to kind of make sure that multi-use path is going to be able to be used by everybody and everyone's comfortable with that. It is somewhat of a new concept as well. We don't have a lot of multi-use paths in the city right now for bikes and pads, so we wanted to verify if that's going to work or not, because we'll have to get feedback to the consultant there. It does appear that this project is going to receive the grant funding, so we're going to be able to move ahead with this. So that's why we wanted to get this feedback going here tonight, just so we can start getting some ideas going on how we want to direct the consultant to move forward with the final design on this.
Yeah, please go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, Tim, so I guess right now with your, all this information that's brought on here on these slides, but typically what you're asking us to focus on is that 10-foot wide path, and whether you find that the committee thinks that it should be something that's moved forward with, correct? And
correct, yeah, that is
okay.
the key piece there. If we're not going to do the path, we're going to need to do some reworking. Yeah, this presentation is what was submitted with the grant application, so this is what we presented as what we would build with the funding. So if we're not going to do that, we need to kind of start addressing some of those topics.
And right, so if and I support that, the 10-foot path, but if not, you're basically saying that 10-foot path would be removed, and then it would be left with what, just a 5-foot sidewalk, or basically the sidewalk on the other side, or just removed in general? Is that?
So more than likely the sidewalk would narrow, and we try to fit the bike lane onto the street somehow and have it be like, like I was saying, it's tough to make it fully protected there. There's not a whole lot of room to make any kind of an island or any kind of a landscape strip there in the street. If we divide the sidewalk and the bike lane up, it's difficult to divide those two up. It just takes more space to get that division there. So that's the shared path really helps us to be able to get the widest width we can for that path, and be able to get bikes and peds separated from the traffic as much as we can.
What about instead of a Sharrow having like an intermediate where it's just a defined bike lane? So it's on the street. It's not separate with like a divider, but it's a painted line as a bike lane. That's still more dedicated than a Sharrow.
Definitely, yeah, and that is an option that was considered as well. It's something like, say, I think the concern with that was that would bikes want to use that and still have to ride it out in the street with the traffic and stuff. I think a lot of this corridor is not necessarily commuter cyclists, but maybe more leisure cyclists and stuff. We want to make it comfortable for people that were maybe riding around with their kids and stuff, that this would be a safer alternative to keep them away from the traffic going through there.
That makes sense.
It is. I just want to jump in, but I agree with Member Heller as well too, regarding, particularly in that section adjacent to the hospital right there. There's a lot of pedestrians and a lot of people moving back and forth and in and out of the hospital and over there. So that could be a little bit challenging. I don't know if some of those applications that we had discussed and Greg brought up about either some signage or something that would delineate this is where pedestrians go and this is where cyclists go would be helpful. Maybe that's something that could come about a little bit later on in understanding how people are reacting or responding to that, if we find it to be more problematic than we initially thought. But I generally am in support of, of that 10-foot multi-use path there. I think it's just going to be more space for people to just move about and do that and feel that comfort level there that's not existent right now.
Sounds good. Yeah, member Heller and then member Diedrich.
Sorry. Correct me if I'm wrong, but based on the pictures, all the parking on both sides of the street is eliminated. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is the trade-off to get that 10-foot strip in there, the multi-use path. The on-street parking would be eliminated in the corridor.
How, so I know there's a ton of traffic up there just from, or parking just from the construction people that are working. Like there's zero parking anywhere along that Hampden from Lafayette to almost to Downing, right? On both sides. It's bumper to bumper, people parked. And I'm guessing it's a lot of employees that are working on that particular build right there. But I would also assume that there's going to be people from both of those new apartment complexes that do not have enough garage space. Is the city requiring enough, or where will alternative parking be? I think it's great that there's no parking. I'm just wondering if all of this is going to overflow into neighborhoods.
I think that is part of the study, is to make sure that there is enough parking. I know the new developments, they were required to put enough parking on site, that they do have enough. I think some of the issue might be that I think some of them charge for parking, so people park on the street because it's free. So I think there's some issues there we need to work through with some of those complexes. But the thought is that there is enough off-street parking for people to use, that there shouldn't be because you're right, we don't want to push all that parking over into the neighborhoods and stuff. That doesn't really solve the problem there, just moves the problem around. So it's something we would definitely look at. And also part of this project is to do some wayfinding signage as well, to help people know where there's public parking available that they can go find, and off-street parking that they can use, that they wouldn't go into the neighborhoods and stuff. We'd find the parking garages for the hospital and stuff, so people know how to park for the hospital and other places around there. That'd be the wayfinding signage would be part of this project, to help people know where there is parking available that's not on the street there.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I mean, I don't know. I just think there's going to be a lot of people from both of those apartment complexes that don't have the garage space to park. And I know that the Julia Temple nursing home employees already park outside of their parking lot, and there's had to be permit parking only over there. So I don't know the answer, just maybe something to consider if there's space to build another lot somewhere, or, I just feel it may be impacting neighbors even more in that area if you eliminate street parking right there.
That's good feedback. And for all the businesses and stuff too, we don't want the businesses to be, struggling for their customers to find a place to park. We want to make sure people can still get to the businesses in that area. So that's definitely something that's going to be looked at closer as we get further into the design on this, to make sure we don't create an unintended consequence somewhere else by doing that. So definitely something will be part of the overall look at the final design.
I have one more positive of that, though. The positive piece of not having any of that street parking is it really opens up the view when you're trying to make any kind of right-hand turn off of any of those side streets or left-hand turn. It is so hard to see where you're going. So a benefit to not having any street parking right there is the visibility. And if you're going to have more pedestrians, which is the hope, then, that visibility opens up a lot. So there's definitely pros to it, but just thinking about where people who live in those apartment complexes who have 2 to 3 cars per unit and only one garage spot, where are they going to go? So that was it. Sorry, I didn't repeat.
Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
Thanks, Greg. I'm definitely in support of this upgrade, and have been for a long time, and appreciate city continuing to move forward on this. And I just to confirm, Tim, the wide path will be, it says it's on the north side, correct, of the road. Okay. I really like seeing the park strips on there. I think that's something that Englewood has done well with the updates on Broadway and some other areas. And I think this is another great spot for us to add some of that as a feature. And the separated wide path, I think is a great idea, especially given that there's always going to be emergency vehicles in that area. You know, I wanted just to clarify, because I heard a little discussion earlier, but when we're talking about some sharrows on the road, that would be in addition to the path, right? And not separate as a separate project, right?
Correct. Yeah, we give the cyclist a choice between on-street or using the path.
Okay, great. You know, given the nature of that road, I see people on one side of the road probably utilizing that significantly more, particularly on the downhill side, not the uphill side, which also in the winter, the uphill side would be the side that would be more in the shade as well over there as a consideration. You guys have thought about a lot of that already, given the building designs in that area. The 10-foot wide path, I don't think it should go any more narrow than that. I liked Greg's idea of that sort of separation by maybe color or even, you know, texture. You know, maybe you have a different texture on the pedestrian side that would just make it less comfortable for bikes to ride on, and it would naturally put people over on the other side. Or, you know, textured rumble strips now and then or something to give it a little design, Englewood logos maybe. Just a thought, but I don't think that should go any narrower. And I like that it's separated and to keep it separated from the traffic lane. And so fully in support of that, you know, if it could even be a little wider, you know, there's a part of me that looks at this width of the road and, you know, I think about it like a budget and where do you allocate your money or what you allocate your 100 feet that you have to work with, you know, so where's your priorities here on this section of road? And so I think there's been a nice prioritization of the pedestrian areas and the park strips, which I think are important, because also those park strips, if we do need to make adjustments to the paths in the future, that gives some leeway on either side. But also I like the protection from the traffic, because you know, sometimes it can get a little fast in that area. So fully in support of that as well. You know, I don't know what the effect of the budget would be to make that 10-foot path an 11-foot wide path. Yeah, it's quite a distance, and that's quite a bit of concrete, and there, you know, there's some real costs associated with that. But thinking about Greg's idea of the separation a little bit of the ped and the cyclist over there, you know, maybe that could be something that could be considered in the way that it's designed as maybe a future update to maybe widen that side a little bit as well. Would be something to consider also. So anyways, my comments, I think generally this looks pretty darn good. And looking forward to something like this being implemented and using it in the near future as well. And appreciate Jen's comments on the parking. You know, I hadn't even thought of that because I don't go over in that section as frequently as others do. And so the parking hasn't really affected me other than the businesses that I visited with the lots. But I think with some of the zoning and the requirements there, you know, the lots are going to maybe be a little smaller than they need to be in some situations. And that's just the nature of some of the businesses over there. So anyways, that's my input. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, basically going back to again, Member Heller, that did bring up a great point about the parking there too. I understand how busy that is through there, and for people in the neighborhood, or whether you're an employee at Swedish and so on, there's just quite a bit happening there, and the parking is a concern there. I guess my comment is just a general comment that I hope that, you know, when I see these developments and these apartment buildings and so on going up, that the city internally coordinates, I guess, the needs of, we're going to require this, the developer to have this many parking spaces or a garage or something that accommodates so much of this, in partnership with the city's vision on projects like this. And that this is something like, hey, this is going to be coming, and so it would be a benefit to get all the cars off of that corridor, parking off that corridor. Therefore, you know, developer needs to understand that there's going to be maybe additional parking needs, or, you know, for that. So I hope that happens. And I think, generally from what I've heard here, it seems as if, Tim, everybody's pretty agreeable on a 10-foot sidewalk there, or multi-use path there, probably as a minimum. I think Member Diedrich mentioned 11 foot, so I think right now we could almost vote on that if we need be in terms of that. So, but that's my comments on that.
Thanks everybody for the comments and discussion. So Tim, are you looking for a specific motion from us or just discussion?
Yeah, I think at this time, just feedback, and what we're gonna do is go back to the consultant with some of this feedback and see what they can do to address some of this, see what we can, I really like the thought of maybe the different color concrete for the bike section. I think that might help define that better. So we'll kick around some of those ideas and come back to you with some other options maybe and some things we can do and not do to get some more feedback as we get into the design. We just wanted to make sure the path seems like something we can kind of tweak and adjust if we need to make it work for everybody, and we'll continue to look at ways we can make that work, and moving forward, try to get a solution that works for everybody and that everybody's comfortable with, and we'll continue to look at it and come back to you with other options as they are developed.
Okay, sounds good. I was able to find a way to measure that bike path using Google Maps, and at least as accurate as that was, it was at 16 feet up on the CU Boulder campus. So that's pretty wide.
16 foot here.
Yeah.
That is not going to happen on this corridor unless we want to eliminate a travel lane, not have cars go both ways.
Yeah, but I think that you know, at that section especially, that the like morning traffic when a class is starting is pretty heavy on the campus, and I don't think that the hospital approaches that level of foot traffic in a concentrated time period. So I feel like something that's at least 10 feet should be pretty good for the for how dense that area is. And I feel like yeah, Member Lewis, I feel like that was a great idea to add the sharrows as well. You know, so that we've got I think it was your idea anyway, yeah, so like providing, you know, hey, if you want to be on the sidewalk, like you're saying, I think you mentioned this, Tim, like if somebody's going with folks who are not as bold of riders, if they're like a level 1 rider, then staying on the sidewalk and traveling at 10 miles an hour, okay, fine, that's a pretty compatible use with somebody who's walking on the sidewalk. But if you're traveling more like 30 miles an hour on the downhill especially, then hey, you can roll with traffic, right? So it seems like there's a couple good options here. All righty. Well, so I think that takes us into the territory of director's choice. Tim, you're standing in, I guess. Anything that you wanted to talk about tonight under that category?
No, I don't think I have anything additional to share this evening. Those are the two items we have ongoing now for the committee. I'm not maybe give you a couple updates on projects and things. We did recently kick off our melon overlay project for this year. That started earlier this week. We're going to be repaving a lot of the streets in the southeast part of the city. That's where we're working this year. So that's kicked off. And our alley grading program is just about wrapped up for the year. We've just about graded every alley now with the V channel. So that's exciting to see. We've gotten through every alley now and got that done. And the contractor's going back and touching up some of the ones that needed a little more work. And we should be in good shape for the winter coming up here. The alleys are going to be in good shape. That's all wrapped up, and good things moving ahead. So we've trying to wrap things up before the winter hits us here. We're glad to have this warm weather to keep going on construction so we can get it all done, but we'll wrap up here in the next couple months. So I think that's about all I have for tonight.
Sounds good. Thank you. So up next, Chairperson's choice. I don't have anything additional on the agenda, so we'll go to committee members' choice. Member Lewis, anything you wanted to talk about tonight?
No, nothing further from me.
All righty. Thank you. Member Sarno, anything from you?
Yeah, just a question for Tim. Tim, you mentioned about some of the pavement management, I believe, and what's going on with the city with that. All good on that, just some of our roads and repairing them and doing that. But my question is regarding, does the city have a moratorium on if a road is paved and you have a utility company, for example, that wants to put in a new service or line or whatever, that there's X amount of years that they're forbidden to go ahead and, you know, cut in a trench or do something like that and do that. I know there's, if an emergency situation when it comes to gas and electric and so on and those sorts of things, that's understandable. Water, that's in the roadway. But what I've seen too often is that you get a new roadway or paved roadway, and then immediately following that, there's somebody there just cutting it up and putting some patch back. And depending on the patch, it just doesn't come back to being a nice finished product as it was previously. Does the city have any sort of moratorium or guidance on that?
So yeah, we do have a 2-year moratorium on that, but what happens, like you said, those emergency gas leaks, it's hard to stop them when the gas is leaking. And for
Yeah,
whatever reason, they seem to follow around the overlay project. You're right, that kills me as much as anything to see that happen. Oh my gosh, we're gonna cut into a brand new mat.
mhm,
We don't let them do any kind of planned work. We'll push them out. You've got to wait at least 2 years after we pave the road so they don't cut into it. But it's those service lines at times, they'll have a leaking gas service or a leaking water service or something. And we've got to get those repaired. Those are a safety
Yeah.
hazard. So unfortunately, those are some of those cuts you see. And that is something we tried to get the contractors to do a little better job of patching those back in so they don't look like such a scab on the street. We're
mhm.
working through that. Yeah, that is something that really hurts us as well when we see that. It's like, oh my gosh, what are the odds of getting a gas leak right after we paved the street? It just, I
Right,
don't know why that happens, but that is, unfortunately, it does happen more than we'd like it to, but we
Yeah.
definitely don't let them do any planned work on streets that we pave.
right. No, and I try to distinguish between, of course, if it's something, a gas infrastructure, that water, that kind of infrastructure, as opposed to, if there's a telecom company that wants to put a new vault or a new fiber line or whatever, in that kind of sense. And it's just, and they just, when they patch it back, it just, you've seen it or commented on it, just kind of feels like it ruins the road. It just, they don't quite get it right to what it was. And so I was just curious on that. So, but obviously out of necessity and out of safety, if it needs to happen, you got to go in there and cut up the road. Whether they just paved it yesterday, doesn't matter. That's understood. But I was just curious on the city's policy on that, but you answered it. So thank you.
So those fiber guys, we do push them off quite a lot. Actually, they'll try to come in and want a pothole and stuff. We'll say, you're done for 2 years. You're not going to do that right now. We're not letting that happen.
Right. Yeah. And exactly.
Find a different way around. So you can go around to a different block or something. You don't need to put it down this block right now. And we do try to share our plan with them so they know what streets we're paving. So they know that you better get it in now before we pave. Otherwise, you're going to wait for a while. So we do try to be a little more proactive with them so they know what's coming. And same with Excel and CenturyLink and stuff. We try to meet with them once a year and say, here's the streets we're paving this year. Do you guys have anything planned for these streets before we pave them? And make sure they're at least aware of it. Then they can come back later and say they didn't know we were paving the road. We make sure they know what our program looks like so they can plan around us as well.
Right. It's kind of like get in there now before we do our improvements, or they'll have to wait, or they'll have to find another path or corridor to go into.
Exactly. That's how it works. Yeah.
Okay, real good. Thank you. Appreciate it, Tim. That's all I have, Chair Knaddison.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, on
Number,
Neil's
Go ahead.
question real quick, just as a follow on, Tim, how does that apply to like new developments and redevelopments? Is it the same ruling? Because in my area, there's a lot of perpendicular cuts for these duplexes and things going in. I'm just curious, does that same rule apply there?
So for those, we do try to plan ahead for those because we know those developments that are coming in. We try to not do the overlay because we know they've got to cut in their service lines and their utilities for their new site there. So we do try to coordinate around those. I think there's been a time or two, I think, where we've not realized that the developer was coming in that quick or whatever, but normally we do plan ahead for those as well. When there's any kind of development, we identify those and make sure we hold off on paving them because we know those guys are going to have to get in there and cut that up to put in the utilities. So that's something we try to coordinate as well.
Thanks.
yeah, and I think Member Diedrich, it's your turn. If you had anything else you want to talk about tonight.
Nothing else on my end. Thank you.
Alrighty, Member Heller.
Yeah, I sent an email and I apologize, Greg, that was having a discussion outside of our meeting, but and I don't know if we have to discuss this tonight because I know it's getting late, but maybe at a future date. I work for Charles Hay, and I'm sure this is happening at other elementary schools too, but I would just love to see the city and the police department possibly work closer with our elementary, middle, and high schools in terms of traffic safety. we have brand new buildings and we're just running into mostly our own families, right? Our own parents. So it might be something that the school needs to address, but essentially we as a school wanted to close off the street, Eastman right here from, I'm pointing as if you can see me, but Eastman between Downing and Marion with just some temporary cones and people standing there to essentially let our school bus load kids up. And then parents like to play Frogger and run across that street. And so closing it just was much safer because our only crosswalks are right on Marion Street or on Downing, not in between there. So anyway, one particular parent was adamant that we were not allowed to close the streets off and we couldn't do it, and called and complained. And so he complained enough that the police said you can't do it, which legally we couldn't, but we were all standing there. This is a long story, but it feels sometimes very dangerous. Downing is busy, and I'm just wondering if there's a way or a recommendation or anything that we could do that encourages the Englewood Police Department and the city to work more closely. I mean, I would love it in all areas, but since I'm part of this committee and I saw that we were listed when I was Googling who to call and who to complain to, I was like, oh, I'm on the committee that I can call and complain to. So let me be proactive. Just a bigger partnership, a greater partnership to keep our kiddos safe. And whether that means more police are on patrol the first 2 weeks of school, or they're assigned a rotation for the first 2 weeks of school, giving our parents tickets. They block driveways, they block the alley, they block everything. They park in handicap places without handicap stickers, they park in staff parking. Like, it's really unfortunate, but it's sometimes a lot out of our hands once they start getting into the city streets. So that was a long story. I don't know if anyone has ideas on, like, if, we write a letter, a recommendation or something like that, that helps push the city and the EPD to help us out a little bit.
We do actually have, it's coincidental you're mentioning that. Now tomorrow there's a meeting with the police department and our traffic staff to talk about that a little bit more. Charles Hayter, what's going on, and see if we can come up with a better plan. So we are looking at that, and we did get a request from the police department to take a look at better ways to handle that. So that meeting's happening tomorrow to try to discuss some strategies on that, and I can definitely report back after the meeting. I'll let you know what options they came up with and different ways to do that. But yeah, that is something that has been identified, and we're going to talk about it some more to see what we can do.
That's awesome. Is there a representative from the school coming as well?
I was looking at my email here. Let me see who the school person is. Matt Kriege is the officer that we're meeting with, and then I think let's see who the school representative is here. Let's see here if I can see it. It's just I thought there was somebody from the school here as well. I'm not seeing it. So
what are you doing then, Jen?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, Kimberly DeHaven, does that sound familiar? That's the representative we've been working with on that.
Yeah, she's the head of the bus department.
Okay.
So the school bus person. So she probably has some ideas too. I think that's great, Tim, and I really appreciate it. And if you could share some of the concerns around what's out of our hands when I'm sure the neighbors are completely frustrated by how often their driveways are blocked, and it's really just people not, I'm going to say it, but they're being lazy. They don't want to walk any further than they have to. They want to get their kids as quickly as possible, which I completely understand. And we're trying to work on our end too, but it's dangerous. People run the stop sign, people speed through there. So I think, if you could share all of those things and see if the city could help out or send officers more often around to just make it a safer place and not have the staff at the school have to argue with parents every single day.
Steph, I think the purpose of the meeting is to kind of get an idea of what's happening, what we can do to make it better. So we'll definitely should see some changes there, some things we can at least look at to make that a little bit of a better situation for everybody.
Great, thank you.
It's definitely not the first time that the traffic around Charles Hay has been discussed for this committee. I remember a couple of years ago talking about it, and I feel like some of these crosswalks are new since then. So that seems like an improvement. You know, it feels like there probably could be a couple more, especially going across Floyd, since Floyd is a bit busier of a street to encourage kids to walk, which, you know, then reduces the number of people driving. So maybe makes a slight reduction for the problem you're talking about. I wonder about, it looks like there's a dedicated right turn lane here into this area. Is the idea that that's like a drop-off path?
Apparently, when the school was originally built, that that whole area was actually just supposed to be a bus pick up and drop off, a school bus drop off. And so the rest of like Lafayette, I mean, our car line extends from Eastman and Marion all the way around to the backside of Lafayette. That, however, didn't happen. And what we do have now is that dedicated right lane off of Downing into behind the school is for 4 through 6 pickup. So grade levels 4 through 6 pickup back there. That car line goes pretty fast. I don't think we have too much of a backup on Downing. I don't think that's been the major complaint. And then the younger kiddos, we walk them to their cars. So they go, and then right in front of the school, so all the way from Downing to Marion, essentially, or where that parking lot starts, is a dedicated bus lane. So we don't even start our car line back there. But what maybe will happen with Kim being at this meeting, Kim DeHaven, is that the bus goes to where it's originally was supposed to go, because we only have one bus and maybe 10 kids ride it, maybe. So we're committing a whole system and routine to one bus with 10 kids on it. That's kind of disrupting things. So hopefully that all gets worked out as well. But I don't, you know, I'm sure that with Downing as being as busy it is, and even Dartmouth, which is a little farther off, but Dartmouth's pretty busy too, that it creates some concerns over there. So yeah, I just think having the city and having the police department on our side a little bit will help with the families who are complaining about policies that we put in place to try to protect the kiddos.
For sure. Yeah, my memory from the last time was that there were sort of parents who had feedback, and we couldn't find somebody on the school side who was willing to get together and have a conversation. So I feel like now there's some, you know, if we can get, you know, police plus parents plus school, you know, that was sort of the magic formula relayed last time from Lad Vostri, if anybody remembers that name. Yeah, so hopefully we can come up with a good solution there. But yeah, I would say please do continue bringing it up as long as it's a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. All righty. Mayor Sierra, anything that you're hoping to bring up tonight?
No, nothing for me, but it's good to hear about the Charles A because I see it every day. So, but thank you.
Yeah. All righty. Well, I think we've run through the agenda according to my calculations. So we can adjourn for the night. Thanks everybody for your contributions, thoughts, and questions. I appreciate it.
Good night.
Thanks.
Good night,
Good night, everyone.